Hello, everyone. Greetings and welcome to the next in the series on the walking dedicated men of Scripture. This is part of an ongoing series for One Faith, One People Ministries, and I am Andrew Gabriel Roth. And as you can tell from the opening graphic, our topic is about the flood, and therefore it is about the two calendars of Noah and the walking dedicated men. Part 4. So let's get started. Getting into the situation with Noah, we need to just spend a moment recapping what we've seen before. If you haven't watched the previous installments on Adam and Enoch, I encourage you to, because that will sort of set the tone for the whole process and the organizing principles behind this very, very detailed, intricate, and comprehensive series. At least it will be by the time, by Yah's grace, if I am allowed to do it. So let's just recap with, my assumption is that you've listened to the Adam and Enoch calendar teachings. What I believe we have seen then from those previous installments is how sophisticated the calendar math was that Adam and Enoch knew. With little more than knowledge of Father Yah's name, the Shabbat, and when Genesis 1 put the sun, moon, and stars in the sky, which is on day 4, just with those very basic sounding, obvious sounding elements, they had a calendar more accurate than the one we use now. Enoch also showed advanced knowledge of the length of the solar year. He lives 365 years, one for each whole day of the solar year. And the average times between equinoxes and solstices, 187, which is the age of Methuselah when he had his son, and 182, the age of Lamech when he had his son. But as cutting edge as these systems were, they were lacking aspects most of us would take for granted as being essential in any calendar. They had no months of any kind, lunar or solar. The fact is, no word meaning moon or month appears before the start of the flood. Genesis 7 verse 11 is the first mention of Hodesh, which is month. That Hodesh can be a lunar or a solar cycle. And the word for moon, although it is implied as the lesser light in Genesis 1, the word moon itself does not appear directly until Genesis 37, the Hebrew word Yariach, when Joseph dreams that the sun, the Yariach, and 11 stars all bow down to him. In turn, Yariach is not used as a synonym for month until Exodus 2 verse 2. Where Moses, writing about his own infancy, says he was 3 Yarachim, 3 months old, before the daughter of Pharaoh found him. This shows us that by the time Moses is writing, he does reckon time in lunar months, but he doesn't count lunar months in Genesis. Another group of very early references to Yariach, moon, as a month of time is in the book of Job. Job 7:3, 29:2, and 39 verse 2. But the point is that Noah's months are not called moon, but rather Chodesh. Chodesh actually is from the word to renew. It means a renewal cycle. So I'm trying to get the pointer over here. There we are, a renewal cycle. But the question is, renewal of what? Because while Chodesh does refer to the renewal of the moon later on, I still believe the scripture is clear that in its earliest use, Chodesh refers to the renewal of the sun. And we will see why the lunar math for flood days simply doesn't work. And that's a bit later on. The idea, though, of the sun renewing itself, not just on a daily or a yearly basis, but by the month as well, may sound strange to some, but I'm going to tell you why I believe that. First, It's important to track the terminology given in Genesis 1 verse 14 through verse 19, particularly with two words, gadol and meor. For gadol, it is used in two different ways. It's translated as greater in English, and the greatness is referring both to the luminosity or the magnitude of the light, but also to its rank in the heavens, its hierarchy, who rules whom. In astronomical terms, an object can appear to be bright, either because it's very close to us or because it's further away and very big. Sometimes, of course, that both are true. You have very close, very bright objects. Our sun and moon are not large at all when compared with similar objects throughout the universe, but they are nevertheless very close to us on the earth. And this is where the second word comes into play also, meor. Although it's derived from the word or, which is Hebrew for light, technically speaking, this refers to a light source, not the light by itself. So when Father Yah said, Vayehi or, right, and Yehi or Vayehi or, let there be light, and there was light. In Genesis 1 verse 3, he brought that light from nothingness, and it had no source other than him. But when he said in Genesis 1 verse 14, Vayehi ma'arot berachia hashmayim, or let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens, this meant something entirely different. Here, Father Yah was creating light-emitting objects, not just light. And because they are objects, we know he is referring to the two greater lights, the sun and the moon. So, for example, a star may appear as a light in the night sky, and we would say, okay, it's a light, it's or. But the star itself, like the sun and the moon, is a light source, a luminary, or meor, that transmits the light. Then getting back to this key word gadol, these luminaries are measured in two ways. One, from the relative strength of the light, regardless of distance or rank. And two, by the rank or power that one luminary has over the others. So, for example, compared to the distant stars, the moon is a greater light because it appears larger in the sky because it's closer. That's why Genesis 1:14 says both the sun and moon are greater lights. It's comparing them to distant lights, which are much more faint. But if we're asking who's in charge, what's the rank, what the functionality or power, it turns out the moon is less powerful than either the stars or the sun, for reasons we will see a little later on. The sun is a star, so bear that also in mind. But for now, let's focus on the next occurrence of these words, gadol and meor, which is in Genesis 1 verse 16. And in this case, the focus of the descriptions has now shifted. Whereas before, in Genesis 1 verse 14, the sun and moon are collectively being compared to the stars in the background, now in 1 verse 16, the sun and the moon are being compared to one another. As we read, and Elohim made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night and the stars. So now the sun and moon are being compared to each other. So that's why I ask, see the shift in perspective? The first part of 1 verse 16 is still calling both the sun and the moon great in comparison to the rest of the lights in the night sky. The second part of the verse, the sun and moon are put in direct comparison, that are the two great lights. The sun, which is greater than the moon, rules the day. Then in Genesis 7 verse 11, we get the first occurrence of this word chodesh. Since our days and weeks, groups of 7 days, are ruled by the sun, rising and setting, the chodesh, the renewal cycle, must be referring here to solar time. It is only in Exodus 2 verse 2 and in the book of Job that Yariach, moon, is actually used to mean Chodesh. And even when Yariach and Chodesh are referring obviously to lunar months, the sun still rules over the lunar months because, again, the months are comprised of days and the greater light rules the day. In other words, the sun rises and sets and the moon counts within the structure that is given to it by the sun. But if the scripture is talking about solar months, how are they measured? The answer has to do with the chambers, and boy, we're going to be getting into chambers and windows a lot later. The chambers that the sun spends 30 days in before moving on to the next one. 30 sunrises to be specific. Let me show you how the system works. Step 1. Take the length of the actual tropical year as we measure it today, which is 365.242187 days, which comes out to 365 days, 5 hours, 48 minutes, and about 45 seconds. Take that aggregate and divide it by 12. The result, 30.4368, or 30 days, 10 hours, 29 minutes, and 3.75, call it 4 for his friends, seconds. So you're going to, number 2, then you will begin your Hebrew day, the sunset before you track the first sunrise of your year. This is really important. By the time you see that first dawn, your year is about 12 hours old. And that 12 hours is going to have an impact on that extra 10 hours, 29 minutes, and 3.75 seconds. We'll see how that works. In regards to this point, this means that, again, 12 hours of the new year have already elapsed before the first sunrise at 90 degrees. Remember, we were talking about this in Adam and Enoch, that at equinox mornings, the sun will rise at 90 degrees, and fall equinox is New Year's Day morning. Again, if that sounds a little odd, please refer to the previous installments of this series. You're going to then count a total of 30 sunrises, including this first one, observing that the sun is in the same 30-degree chamber of the sky during that time. Let me try to review this solar pattern a little bit better. We've seen this before in the series on Adam, tracking the position of the sun as it rises in the east throughout the year. This is December solstice. Okay? You're looking due east, right? This is the Stellarium program. When you're looking due east and it's December, this is the southernmost place that the sun will rise, here on the right. Now, moving on. March equinox sunrise. You can probably see that ball of fire here. That's exactly due east. There is your 90-degree angle. Here's the graphic for that. June solstice. Again, it went from here to here, now to here. So you see it's going right, middle, and as you see here, left. September equinox, it's gone right, middle, left, and now it's gone back to center there. And then, of course, it goes back to here. Now, that's a little fast. Let me show the whole thing. I know, my graphic skills, as I said before, are not the best. You can tell I copied and pasted these sunrises here. But let me show you this anyway. Here's winter. Winter leads to spring. Spring leads to summer, right? And then after summer solstice, you can see it's going backwards. It's going back. It's going to be at that straight angle that we talked about here, which is, of course, this fall equinox. And then it will go back to winter. And there is that 90-degree angle that we see at spring and fall at the commencement of those seasons. Now, the chambers that we mentioned, the sun will be rising in these 6 chambers basically about 1 month, and then it's going to come back. You'll see how these 6 chambers are used each 2 times throughout the year. You get 6 months going this way. Here's my friendly arrow. First month, winter. Second month, third month. Then, of course, we get the first month of spring, second month, third month. Going that way. Summer begins, after which we have 6 chambers going that way. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. First month summer, second month summer, third month summer, first month fall, second month fall, third month fall, and back to winter. So this brings me to the third step. When the 30th sunrise has happened, that day in Hebrew terms still has another 12 hours, half a day to go. Because remember, that first sunrise started the previous sunset in Hebrew time that first day. So therefore, you need that 12 hours to cover the 10 hours, 29 minutes of the rest of the solar month. Now, if that sounds a little bit heady, just stay with me. What that means is that when you have sunrise number 30, right, the Hebrew day will end that sunset. Then the next morning, sunrise 31, the sun is in its next chamber, the second chamber, the subsequent chamber, to start the count all over again. This is how you can have 12 30-day months per year. However, the issue is that any given solar year does not only have 360 sunrises. It's going to be between 365 and 366, depending upon the time of day of the equinoxes. To deal with this fact, we need to understand that what I've just described works fine only between 2 consecutive months. If you're only taking a snapshot between months 1 and 2, and months 2 and 3, months 3 and 4, no problem. But if you're trying to go 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then you're going to lose track of time. It will not work over the course of the year. But Noah already had significant help in dealing with this from his ancestors to solve the problem of 12 months at 30 days each over a 365.2422 day solar year. From Adam, Noah had learned to count in 2 sets of 26 weeks. Each of these weeks is from the 4th day of the week, Wednesday, to Tuesday, and then track the next fall equinox over the next 3 days to have your witnesses to see if the sun is rising and setting in the proper angle Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. If you get your 2 witnesses, you point back to that Wednesday and say New Year's Day. If not, you will add a leap week. You will begin your 26-week count from the following Wednesday. From Enoch, Noah learned that these 52 weeks, 52 times 7, of course, 364 total days, took place, though, within a framework of 365 days, because Enoch lived 365 years. And how to count the predicted times from equinox to equinox, which are numbers 187 and 182. Now, all Noah had to do was establish 12 30-day months counted from the Wednesday on or after what we now call fall equinox. And this brings us to our next step. NYD, of course, means New Year's Day. Count 360 days with each of the 12 months at 30 days. So that's the thing that Noah will do. Then at the end of the 360th day, he's going to end on complete the luminary count, which will end 4 days later on a Tuesday. Okay? He's at 360. He still needs to count that 52nd week. And he's going to count it 4 more days until Tuesday. Then he's going to use the next 3 days. Wednesday is what we call balancing day. We talked about that before. And Thursday and Friday are witness days. And what he's looking for is at least 2 witnesses that the sun is rising at 90 degrees or at a greater angle, either way, which lets him know that fall has arrived and establishes that the new year has begun. By Friday sunset, Establish whether you've had those 2 or more witnesses. Again, the sun will either rise at 90 degrees or it will set at 270 degrees. Now, I don't mean to belabor the point in terms of advanced astronomy, okay? But here's the thing. You're dealing with the perception of a circle. So if the sun rises at equinox days at 90 degrees, the remainder of the angle of 360 is 270, and so it will set at that point. Wednesday is again called balancing day because Wednesday is in the middle of the week. It balances, right? So Noah has all months at 30 days. That's the key point in both of his calendar systems. In his first calendar, the earlier one, he will balance that calendar at the end of 360 days, at the end of the 12th 30-day month in a row. So what we just revealed is the first of 2 of Noah's calendars. Again, one where every month is always 30 days long and the year is balanced after the end of the 12th month. As we are about to see, though, this arrangement will work perfectly with the data on the days of the flood in Genesis chapters 7 and 8. But like with a lot of things, there's a catch. The catch is that some think Moses' use of the word Yariach, or moon, for the 3 months in Exodus 2 verse 2 suggests the moon was already used this way before Moses' time. And while I disagree with that, and what I've put together goes against that, I must admit, to be fair to the other side, I see some logic in their assertion, which is why we need to test the data. I'm not just asking you to take my word for it. I'm asking to test the data of the flood months that are in the scripture and see what system works. So were the months of the flood, the Chodesh, were they solar or were they lunar? In order to find out, we need to apply what we know about lunar months and set up a proper test. Our preliminary test criteria consists of 2 simple facts. 1, the length of the lunar month has never changed. And 2, the lunar month is no less than 29 and no more than 30 days long. Always. In terms of proving both these assertions, well, we just go to archaeology. Egyptian records from 3000 BC demonstrate the lunar month was always alternated between 29 and 30 days. The Egyptians could calculate their astronomy within 1/10 of a degree. They were some of the best engineers the world has ever known. And I don't see them messing up on the length of the lunar month every month. But to be fair, while that's the general rule to alternate months between 29 and 30 days, just to be in the interest of full disclosure, it is possible to have back-to-back 29-day months and back-to-back 30-day months in that mix. Still, and this is also important, there are limits in terms of astrophysics to how many back-to-back 29s or 30s in a row you can have. Similarly, Sumerian and Chinese records also document the lunar month varying between 29 and 30 days from 3700 BC, maybe a little bit earlier, to 3000 BC. For more information, see the landmark paper, The Calendars of Ancient Egypt by Richard Parker. Absolute classic in determining a lot of this ancient timekeeping. But our next step is to set up our main equation. Warning, we're going to be doing a little math, okay, a little algebra, but I'm going to make it very, very easy, okay? And our equation is derived from these scriptures. As we read, in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, 17th day of the month, on that day all the fountains of the great deep were broken up. And the windows of the heavens, remember I talked about chambers and windows, going to be very important, so remember that term. The windows of the heavens were opened, and the rain was on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. On that same day, so this tells us the 17th day of month 2, that's another important clue, Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and the sons of Noah and Noah's wife, and the 3 wives of his sons with them went into the ark. Right? So that's Genesis 7, 11 through 13. And then, of course, the waters were mighty on the earth for 150 days. If the waters are mighty on the earth, then the ark cannot rest yet on the mountains of Ararat until, of course, we get here. And the waters receded steadily from the earth, and at the end of 150 days, so not during 150 days, at the end of 150 days, the waters diminished, and in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, the ark rested on the mountains of Ararat. Genesis 8:3-4. The data in these scripture passages is all we need to recover the exact number of days and the timing of the flood. And yes, I mean telling you exactly the calendar day in our own Gregorian calendar when the flood actually happened. So here are our facts from Genesis 7 and 8 about the flood. This is what we can know for certain, I believe. Number 1, the flood begins on the 17th day of the 2nd month. Number 2, phrases like that same day they went into the ark imply that the 17th day of the 2nd month is included in the counting of days. They're not counting from the 17th. They are counting inclusive of the 17th. But we will explore both possibilities, including and excluding this day. We also know the last flood month, called the 7th month, has only 17 days in it until the ark rests on the mountains of Ararat. The sum total of this time also, point number 4, from the 17th day of month 2 to the 17th day of month 7 is after 150 days, which means at least 151. I'm going to keep hammering that point. The ark does not rest on day 150. It must rest on 151 or later. From this data, we set up the following equation. RM2, the remainder of the 2nd month, right, plus WM 3-6, WM whole months 3 through 6, plus 17 for the 7th month. That's our constant, including when the ark rests on the mountains of Ararat. It's on the 17th day, equals at least 151 days. So we begin our test to determine if the flood months could be lunar by looking at the last 17 days of the flood, those days in the 7th month. To these 17 days, we must add 12. Why? Because this is assuming the opening flood month, number 2, is a lunar month of 29 days, and we are excluding day 17 of month 2. We're counting from it, not inclusive of it. Our first attempt looks like this. RM2, remainder month 2, 12, plus 17 days of month 7 equals 29 days. Since the total number of days that we have to make up, though, is 151, this means the 4 middle months, 3, 4, 5, and 6, must total this, 122. But remember those rules about the lunar month. If this is a lunar system, no lunar month can ever be more than 30 days. So the most you can get is 120, and what we need is 122. This is short by at least 2 days, and probably more than that. Even when we tweak this scenario, now we're going to include that 17th day from the 2nd month. Now the 2nd month has 13 days. This still doesn't work because of this 151 day minimum requirement. So this scenario with the lunar month it doesn't work. So our next task, we will make RM2, the remainder of the 2nd month, equal 14 days. So now we're going to say that the 2nd month has 14 days left because it's 30 days long, and it includes that 17th day in the flood count. Here's what that math does. Remainder of month 2, 14 days, day 17 to day 30 inclusive, plus 17 days in month 7, 31 days. In this scenario, the middle 4 months, which must each be 30 days long, 30 times 4, 120, plus 31, And yes, we have 151 days. But not so fast. Because now we've got a problem. There's another rule to contend with. This, while it looks like it works, doesn't really work. Let me explain. In a lunar system, you can have 2 back-to-back 30-day months occasionally, once every couple of years. You can have 3 back-to-back 30-day months a bit more rarely, but it does happen. You can even have 4 back-to-back 30-day months in extremely rare cases. But you can never have 5 30-day consecutive months. And you need to have exactly that here. The reason you need 5 back-to-back 30-day months to get to 151 days is that only by having month 2 at 30 days and including the 17th day in the flood count will yield 14 days, as we saw. Then the next four months, which is to say 3, 4, 5, and 6, have to also be 30 days to give us 120. So the second month is 30 days, and then 3, 4, 5, and 6 are also 30 days, and that means you need 5 30-day months, right, to get to 151. And after personally reviewing thousands of years worth of lunar months, and I am not exaggerating, that could touch the time of the flood, I can affirm with 100% certainty that 5 consecutive 30-day lunar months has never happened, either then or at any time since on the Earth. I've consulted astronomers on this and used some advanced software on this. But even so, in the field of biblical calendar research, certain non-astronomers disagree with me. For these folks who tell me that it is possible to have 5 consecutive 30-day months in a row, lunar months, I have asked repeatedly for hard data for any lunar year to demonstrate 5 consecutive 30-day months as measured from lunar conjunction as a fact, and no one has come forward. What's more, even my opponents agree with me that to have 4 consecutive 30-day months, let alone 5, which is required here, must be super rare, which in turn raises another problem. I say that because even if my opponents could prove that 5 consecutive 30-day lunar months happens, say, within the last 7,000 years, they can't. I've asked them to. They can't. But let's be hypothetical here. Even if they could do that, they still cannot point to any credible year that any Bible version says the flood happened in as having those 5 consecutive 30-day lunar months. My position, therefore, remains confirmed, at least at this time. As a result, in any 5 lunar month period, you must have at least one, more likely, much more likely, 2, possibly 3 of those months will only be 29 days long. The fact that Noah is counting 151 days and cannot tolerate a single 29-day month proves Noah could not be counting by the moon, and that all his months had to be 30 days long. This is confirmed in later biblical books where remnants of the older system are still evident. Daniel and Revelation have this, but more a bit more closer to Noah's time are the 30-day requirement for Hebrews to mourn their dead. Okay, regardless as to whether the month they die in was 29 or 30 days. In Numbers 20:29, when the congregation saw Aaron was dead, all the house of Israel wept for Aaron 30 days. They mourn whether or not the lunar month has 29 or 30 days because they are remembering that 30-day cycle from before. Here it is again. Children of Israel wept for Moses, in the desert plains of Moab. How long did they weep? 30 days. And the days of weeping and mourning for Moshe were completed. Therefore, Israel cannot be counting from one phase of the moon to the next occurrence of that same phase. Although, just to be clear, of course, any given lunar month may have 30 days in it. The problem is, not every lunar month does. Therefore, if they were counting by the moon, it would not cover every possible situation by a single 30-day mourning rule. They would simply say, if someone died at full moon, mourn them until the next full moon. And even in Judaism now, we have fixed the time of mourning to 30 days. However, what's interesting is that for foreign women taken captive, Moses does allow the foreign pagan ladies to count by the moon to mourn. Moses says, when you go out and fight against your enemies, and Yahweh your Elohim shall give them into your hand, you shall take them captive, and you will see among the captives a woman fair of form, and shall delight in her, and take her for your wife. You will bring her home to your house, and she shall shave her head, and trim her nails, and put aside the mantle of her captivity. She will dwell in her house. And how long does she mourn? She will mourn for her father and mother for Yariach Yamim, not 30 days, for a moon or a month of days. See that? After that, you will go into her and be her husband, and she will be your wife. So both types of counting, solar and lunar, were being used by the Israelites. But Moses seems to have understood also that the pagans in their midst were more likely to count by the moon alone, which tells us the Israelites did not. Okay? So this is the end of part 1. And in part 2, we'll start going through the process of getting towards Noah's second calendar. That's the next video in this series. Stay tuned for that. Thanks for listening. I'm Andrew Gabriel Roth, and as we like to say in Hebrew, Shalom. I'll see you in part 2.